Hi everybody, we're back with another review. Today we're going to review the last of the store-bought bases that I own. This one was one that you could order from a manufacturer and they would deliver it to you. And it's this guy right here, this G&L L2500. Let's take a look. So here is my G&L L2500. This base has been around for a long time. But as with most of my bases, this one has a story. So you may not have ever seen a G&L L2500 like this one. You may have seen one that was in like a burst color or something like that, but this is not a color. There is no stain on this base. This is the actual natural color of this wood. I'm going to try to get in here and close so you can kind of see. I don't know if you can see how porous that wood is. It's open pore. So this just has a satin, a very flat, matte satin finish on it, but that is the natural color of this wood. It is, I believe some sources call it an Indian walnut, but this is what the actual wood looks like. And it looks to me like it's a book matched piece because you can kind of see the grain matches up a little bit there. So the story of this base is that G&L got some of this this interesting wood, often referred to as Monkeypod. And I don't know this to be a fact, I'm just deducing this, that if you've ever seen a walnut, they kind of look like a pod. And I would assume that maybe monkeys picked them up and played with them, and that's how the tree got its name, Monkeypod. But you can look it up. It's a legitimate wood. Everything is the standard G&L L2500 base, with the exception of this rare Monkeypod wood, which best that I could determine from my research was made back in 2012. I bought this used from a Talkbase user, Scuba Duba. He's got a lot of posts on Talkbase, as a well-known contributor to that site. Don't know why he sold it, but he sold it for a very fair price. I actually had in a shopping cart at a music store an L2500 Blueburst because I was replacing one that I sold years ago, and saw that he had this one for sale. It was very unique. And through my research, I found that there were a very limited number of guitars and basses made with this wood, that G&L got this shipment of Monkeypod wood, and that the basses they made were obviously fewer in number than the guitars they made, and even fewer were the basses that were made with black hardware. So the black crinkle finish bridge, the black knobs, and the black tuners, all of those are OEM, and you really don't see G&Ls very often with those traits. So let's see. All right, so new camera, new mic, different look, different sound, but you can hear the bass. So I always like to joke that Buster Poindexter, if you guys remember that artist from way back in the day, wrote a song about this bass called Hot, Hot, Hot. It is the hottest output bass I have ever owned. Now, it's kind of odd. If you're not familiar with L2500s, you can see a bunch of reviews, but I'll give you a quick rundown. So this switch right here is an active, passive treble boost switch. So it's passive, active, active with a treble boost. The active circuit on this bass is not like other active basses, meaning that this control is a treble cut and this control is a bass cut, and they don't boost. They're cut only. They're just like a tone control on a jazz bass or a P bass. It either rolls off highs or rolls off lows, and of course you have a volume control. Here, this is your pickup selector, so you have this is your pickup selector, so you have bridge, middle, neck, and I keep it in the middle. And then you have series and parallel switch. Some G&Ls have a third selection there that's a single coil mode called the K mod. This bass does not have the K mod. I am not a huge fan of single coils because I don't like hum and buzz, and single coils usually sound thinner to me. They have an extended top end that I don't like. you know, obviously I have a jazz bass, and this red bass here is also single coil, so I have that bass covered. I don't really need any more single coil basses. I run this thing in parallel. The reason I run it in parallel is because this thing has got so much bottom end and so much booty. I mean, this is a 34-inch scale. And that B string is massive. This thing is just, it is the most well-made bass that I have ever owned. I would say I've owned one more bass that is on par with this, and that was a Music Man Stingray Special, which I sold because it just didn't dig the sound. And if I want that sound, I can almost kind of get it out of this bass by just soloing the bridge pickup. Not quite the same, but very similar. But everything on this bass, every single bass that I have, excuse me, I set it up myself. I have a fret leveling tools, and I go through and I round the fret ends if they're sharp, and trim them, file them down, and I'll roll the fingerboard edges if they're not. I've done nothing to this bass. Absolutely zero, nothing to it. There's not a sharp fret. I mean, the frets are perfect and level. Every single one. I've checked them myself. Everything from how the strings line up over the pole pieces, perfect. Everything is just perfect on this bass. I told you guys that I loved heavy high mass bridges. Well, welcome to GNL land, where you have heavy high mass bridges. There's actually a block, a big solid block of metal, and there's a route in the body that block of metal sits in. So the bridge is only held on by two screws, one here and one here. And because I have it strung through, it's strung through the body, the strings push down right over that weight block and hold it in place. Now, some people have claimed that if you string through the bridge, it can pull the screws out. I've never tried that. But there is a mod for that. You simply put screws through the string through holes, and that holds the bridge down. But I usually string through if I can, just because I like the breakover angle it gives me on the bridge. I don't think it gives you any more sustain. I don't necessarily think it sounds any better. But this is a cool bridge. It has some snake oil now, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, but right here, there's a screw. And that screw has a little like a bushing on the end of it, and it presses against the saddles and squeezes them together. And Gino calls it a saddle lock bridge. And it's supposed to mash all the saddles together and make them act as one piece of metal. Because snake oil salesman will tell you that one piece of metal is going to give you the best tone, where nothing is isolated from one another. Then you've got things like monorail bridges that they say, oh, well, separating the vibrating masses make it sound better. You've got, and we're going to get into it's not on the wall anymore because I moved it to take some video of this bass, but I've got a bass we're going to show next that has a really weird bridge. But anyway, that's the snake oil with this bridge. It's the saddle lock bridge, and it's supposed to work magic. And maybe it does, because this bass, I'm telling you, as far as a quality instrument, as far as the way it feels, the way it plays, the way it sounds, it's one of those basses that when you play it by itself, and I don't know if you guys, and I haven't turned off the mic, so you're probably hearing some of the cab come through the mic. But it is just so fat and punchy. This thing sounds fantastic in a mix, especially in a rock band where it just punches with authority. And that's that's in parallel. If you put it in serial mode, and I actually have to turn it down, it'll overdrive the input on my line 6. It's still overdriving. It's distorting it a little right now. It's still distorting it a little. There we go. But I had to turn the bass down probably 25% when I put it in serial mode. This thing is just a beast. It's an absolute monster, and it's a fantastic bass. So let's run through some tones without the mic being on, so you just hear the bass through the amp sim, and then we'll bypass the amp sim and just hear the sound of the bass. And I won't go through all the settings, you know, the parallel and serial, and roll the tone controls off. The tone controls are full up. The active circuit is on, but it's not in a treble boost mode, so it's flat. And I'm running both pickups. And that's the way I play this bass. So let's take a listen. All right, so that was through the amp sim. So now let's bypass everything. And I actually have to pad this guy, so I have to remember to hit my pad. If I don't turn on the input pad, it's too hot for the input of the HX Stomp. And you heard it a minute ago, it distorts. It's the hottest freaking bass on the planet. I have no other basses and have never owned any other basses that required an input pad, except for this one, and it's just a monster. So let's hear what this sounds like. We're going to change over our audio here so that you can hear the other channel. Sorry for this taking a few seconds, just bear with me. All right, and here we go, and I'm going to kill the mics. All right, so that is just the sound of the bass. And this thing is, I have owned a tribute version of the L2500. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. I'm trying to get these channels back, these signal routers. And I love the tribute model so much. I bought a US model of this bass, and it was in the Blue Burst. And it had a natural wood binding and a bound neck, and it was just fantastic. And in 2010, Nashville got hit with a big flood, and my house was affected, and I didn't lose the bass, but I had to rebuild my house. I had about $50,000 worth of damage to my house. So I had to sell some things, and that bass was worth a chunk of money. So I ended up selling it, thinking one day I'll get another one. And I had another one in the shopping cart, like I said in the previous section of this review. And a friend of mine on TalkBass posted this one for sale, and it's so unique. And so, oh, and by the way, I need to mention that this bass, okay, I'm holding it with 2 fingers. It weighs 8 pounds. It is 8 freaking pounds. It it feels like it's made out of balsa wood. It's the lightest 5-string. It's lighter than every bass I have, including all the 4 strings. So this is the first 5-string I've reviewed. It's the lightest bass I own. If you're going to go on a long gig, this is the bass I play on a long gig, because you'll never know you have it on. This is a special bass. I don't know how it all came together, but this one's never going anywhere. I've sold 2 of these, and I will never sell this bass. I mean, unless I'm just, you know, my daughter needs a kidney or something. It is one of a kind. It's a special beast. But this is the end of the road for the factory built basses, for, you know, the Leo Fender type company basses. You know, we've seen P basses, we've seen jazz basses, although one was a Harley Benton, it wasn't a Fender. And, you know, obviously the Warmoth, it's made with licensed Fender parts, so you can almost call it a Fender. This obviously was designed by Leo Fender. And built by CLF Research back in the day, or it was designed by CLF Research before it became G&L, when Leo and George Fullerton started G&L. So it's still a Leo Fender inspired creation, and I would guess the rest of my basses really are too, to some degree, but they are unique, and 2 of them are unicorns. They're the only ones that exist in the world. And one is a small manufacturer here in Nashville. And we'll probably be looking at that base next. So until then, see you guys. Thanks for watching.